Well, hello everybody. It's Joel Hunter here, Dr. Hunter, your philosophy instructor for world religions, Philosophy 210, Truckee Meadows Community College. Glad to have you here. Hello, thank you for joining in. I'm glad I was able to make it almost on time, I think. But we have a packed half hour that I want to spend with you, and I want to get right to what we're going to be doing. Before we start, though, I just want to remind you that if there are other people that you think might be interested in hearing what we're talking about, feel free to share it. And to share, what you do is you swipe left to right if you're on an iPhone, and down to up if you're on an Android. And feel free to use those. Now, let me see, I forgot to turn my notifications off, so go away. All right. So if I could get everybody who is here to just quickly say hi and put your name in all caps, that would be great. Let's see who's here. And that way I'll get some idea of how many people might be interacting, and that's great. Hi, Rachel. Good to have you here. Next time I'm going to turn off my notifications so I don't get funny sounds and images. Great. All right, nice. Cherish, good to see you. Ryan, Timothy, excellent. See the hearts. Tasha, fantastic. Todd, Caitlin, Kayleen, Libby. You know, it seems like, now that's a little less than 10, but it seems like maybe this is a better time for my Philosophy 210 students. Not sure about that. I'm still working on a different venue, a different studio to do an evening broadcast. So be looking out for maybe next week. I might do that. I'm thinking that maybe more of you can show up live if it is in the evenings. I know that'll probably interfere with some of the rest of you, but I want to try to capture the majority of you. All right, so let's get into this. We have a packed slate of things to do here. So first of all, I want to talk briefly about the inventories. And then I want to go and talk about Hinduism, your reading for this week, and things to focus on to help you prepare for the quiz that is available to you. And then the third thing I want to start to talk about, because we won't be able to get through the whole thing, I don't think, is the analysis response assignments. So I want to cover that ground with you. Let me start with the inventories. And as I wrote in my announcement to you, I was really pleased with the diversity of experience that people are bringing to this class. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And it'll be a challenge for you for different reasons. So let me talk about what I saw, what I observed. Some of you come in with very specific convictions about the truth of one particular religion or of all religions, and that can be whether they're true or false. So if you have those very specific views, and you may have some knowledge about that specific religion or multiple religions, the challenge that you're going to face is to be able to detach yourself from those convictions for the sake of doing philosophical investigation. Philosophical investigation is kind of like doing science in a lab. You can't be personally invested in the questions you're asking, even if they really matter to you, even if getting a true or false answer is very, very important to you existentially. So it's a difficult thing to do, and I recognize that, and we're all going to have some kind of bias that we really can't suspend. And really, that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking you, to the best of your ability, to suspend your deeply held convictions about religion, one way or the other, not to deny them. Okay, does that make sense? If that makes sense to you, the difference between denying or sort of a rigorous skepticism, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to do what's called a methodological skepticism. That is, for the sake of doing this experiment on investigating the claims of different religions, we're going to suspend our own views as far as possible so that we get as an objective a perspective as possible. If that makes sense to you, would you give me a couple hearts? And yeah, let's see that that registers, that idea registers. Okay. Now, so the challenge then, thank you. Yes, good. So the challenge, if you have deeply held convictions, then what you're going to need to do, or what you're seeking to do, I should say, is gain a higher perspective. You want to sort of think of this as, if a spatial metaphor works for you, you want to climb higher up the mountain. Right now, if you have deeply held convictions, then you're in the valley. You're in the middle of a community of believers or non-believers. And what you need to do the philosophical investigation is go up the mountain a bit, get some distance, some perspective, so that you can see the broader picture of religion in general and of other traditions that may not be familiar to you or that you may have false assumptions about, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture. Okay. Then there's another group of you. Generally, you could call yourselves agnostics, I guess. You're just not sure about some of the questions that I asked on the inventory, right? About, oh gosh, I don't know if there's a highest good, or I don't know, how to describe the human predicament. I'm not even sure what that is. I get that. So the challenge for you then is going to be avoiding fuzzy thinking. It's really easy to sort of be what? To be undisciplined tolerance. Let's put it that way. Undisciplined tolerance. Tolerance, of course, is a good thing. It should actually increase as a result of you coming out of this course. But disciplined tolerance is where you're going to examine the specific claims and you're going to weigh them as best you can for the reasons and evidence that are presented by the different traditions. Okay, so your job is to sort of get in closer to these different traditions and examine their beliefs as if they might be true. Okay? Does that make sense? Give me some hearts if that makes sense, if that registers with you. So for some of you, it's about getting a broader perspective, great. And for some of you, it is about getting in closer to take a look so that your views are disciplined in what you think and what you think the religion believes. Okay? And who knows, maybe for some of you, you need both of those things. We'll see. All right, well anyway, I just wanted to encourage you, based on your inventories, I think you're definitely going to learn something. In fact, I bet you've already learned something about Hinduism. Or you've learned things even about religion in general just from reading about Hinduism. And what you want to do now with your inventory is you want to start filling out those 10 parts to it, the 3 central principles and then the 7 key claims. You want to try to identify them as you go through. And when you do that, you'll be prepared for next week's assignment, not this week's, but next week's. But when you do that, the personal satisfaction is going to be to look at the answers that Hinduism in this case provides and look at what you said just last week and compare that and just see, wow, why do Hindus think this? Or why was I thinking that? Or why did I interpret human predicament in this way, but Hinduism interprets it in this other way? You see what I'm getting at? You can use this as a tool, a diagnostic tool for yourself, but also as a way to get to the key parts of the various religions that we're going to be reading about. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about the inventory and how you can use your own results from last week going forward. Any questions, though, about that? I'll wait just a few seconds, for you to type in a question. Remember, oh, by the way, questions. If you would, when you have a question about what we're talking about, lead your comment with 2 question marks, and then put your name in all caps, and then put your question. Okay, so 2 question marks, your name in all caps, then your question. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. You've had a few seconds there while I blabbed about that. All right, so number next is Hinduism. Let's talk about some of the things that you'll want to focus on in your reading. You have, I think it's about 65 pages or 60 pages, I think. And that's been spread out over the last 2 weeks. So let me talk about some of the topic areas that in your reading to focus on. In the earlier part of the reading is where most of the questions on the quiz will be drawn from, probably the first 40 pages, 50 pages or so. So that's where, when you're studying for your quiz, before you take the quiz, you'll want to review those sections. And in particular, you should look at the sections what people want and what people really want. These are also very important for filling out your inventory, your model for the analysis response assignment for next week. Okay, so not only is it going to help you to focus on those sections in the quiz, but it will help you to fill out the model and lay that aside for next week. The next section to focus on is the beyond within. This is a really important section to get to the heart of not only the human predicament, what Hinduism says the human predicament is, but also what the highest good is, and what barriers there are to attaining it. Now, the language in your model is moral deficiencies. Now, you can think of this as intellectual barriers or emotional barriers, whatever, but there's a lot in this section, the beyond within, that covers these areas. So do have a close look at that. So the true self, it talks about the true self, and the true self is something that lies beneath, just to use a spatial metaphor, but lies beneath what we call personality. And the author does a very nice job of talking about the etymology of personality, how it comes from the Latin, and it has to do with the masks that actors would wear in drama. And I don't know if you've ever seen ancient drama enacted before, but these masks don't move. It's something that you speak through. But they are supposed to be recognizable as characters. So what the claim there is that personality is essentially not the true self. It may be a part of a surface self, but it's not the true self. And in fact, if you think about the metaphor of the mask, what is required then to understand or to perceive the true self is to remove the mask. And that's very hard because we love our masks. We love our personalities. And we can adopt different personalities given different social situations. So we exchange masks all the time. Or many of us do, at least. I don't. But the challenge then is, from the religious sensibility, is that that is not the true self. The true self is not the sum total of all the personalities that we have. There's more to the true self than that. And so that's what religions, and in this case Hinduism, wants to get us to see and investigate. So what is the true self? Why aren't we in contact with the true self? That's a very good question. Why aren't we in contact all the time with our true self? And how can we gain contact with the true self once we've understood that, oh my gosh, I'm living as if I'm performing all the time on a stage. But my real self, is somewhere else. So how can we regain contact with the true self? And what are the consequences of that endeavor? Now, whether or not you ever attain that, there are consequences just from the attempt to pursue it that are discussed. Okay, so that's the Beyond Within, very important chapter, or section within the chapter. Then the next section, you start to get to some of the practical parts of Hinduism, and you have a section called Four Paths to the Goal. This also is going to appear quite a lot on your quiz, so do pay attention to each of these sections. In this section, what is one of the first clarifying things that is discussed is yoga, what it is, as distinct from what the typical Western suburban experience of yoga is. So there's beware of a trick question on your quiz that wants you to take the wrong answer by thinking that yoga just is the kind of thing that that suburban people do to get fit. It's much more than that in Hinduism, and this section, Four Paths to the Goal, is all about the different yogi by which one may approach that ultimate goal. That is contact with the true self. By the way, before I go on, I want to mention something else that you may have experienced yourself, and you may be, or you may experience in going through this class. There are basically two types of fears that people have when it comes to religion. And those two fears can be boiled down this way. First, there is the fear of being wrong. For people whose deepest fear is to have a belief that is false, that will be an impediment to the kind of experimentation, the sort of intellectual experimentation that is required for you to get a close look, to examine these religions closely. But remember, the job of this class is not to get you to believe the right religion, if there even is one, and that's not the point of the class. But if you have that fear, that you fear most of all believing something that's false, that can be an impediment to serious study of the religions. So be aware of that. There's another fear. The other group of people have a fear of losing contact with the most important thing in the world. And this is a fear of missing out, that perhaps, I ought to investigate these religious claims because I could miss out on something that would be enriching and that would be the most meaningful thing in my life. And you're willing probably to risk false belief because to you it's far more important to lose contact, the fear of losing contact with the highest good that there might be. So be aware. People often come to a course like this with those two fears in play, and be aware of the dangers of those fears. Okay, so just that was an aside because I was talking about contact. Right. Okay, next, the stages of life is also appears on your quiz, but it's about this point that most of the questions on the quiz, end. I want to read a quote from this section because I really thought it captured the heart, not only of Hinduism, but of all religions, or at least religions in their best form. And it is a quote, it's actually not in the text, it's by a Hindu philosopher and poet who won the Nobel Prize in 1913 for literature. And the quote goes this way: "The human soul is on its journey from law to love, from discipline to liberation, from the moral plane to the spiritual." And I think that captures a couple different things. It captures this idea that obeying rules is not the heart of a religion. You'll find in all the major religions that love somewhere figures into the heart of what it's all about. Discipline to liberation. You'll notice that all religions have some form of discipline, practices, rituals, rites that often involve the body, but always involve the mind, and disciplining the mind as well as the body. But the point is not to scrupulously keep those disciplines, but through the disciplines to become liberated from all that is, all those personalities, that covering we have over ourselves, to penetrate to the true self, to have that true self liberated and live in this world. And then from the moral plane to the spiritual. And this is why you can't reduce religion to ethics. Religion is not just about morals, about right and wrong, good and bad. It is, obviously, has something to say about those things because of the other reasons, because there is this pursuit, this quest to find the true self or the highest good. And some moral rearrangement can be helpful to do that. However, the goal is not perfect morality. It is instead this spiritual awakening, enlightenment, those kinds of things. Anyway, lovely quote. Okay, so we have about, I want to try to keep this to 30 minutes. We have just over 10 minutes left. One other side note, and if you get to the Stations of Life, if you haven't read that yet, there's a section called the Stations of Life, and this is where the notion of castes, C-A-S-T-E, caste is discussed, and it's how it figures into Hindu society and Hindu religion. If you are a fan of the Divergent series, Divergent, Insurgent, and something else, Insurrection? No, that's not right. I can't think of the third one off the top of my head. Anyway, if you're a fan of the Divergent series, you will recognize the caste system transposed to post-apocalyptic Chicago. You have 4 castes that have, but these are based on virtues, right? And then you have this 5th caste, but it's not really a caste. They're the outcasts in Hinduism, but in Divergent, they are the factionless, of course. So anyway, I thought that was something that some of you might appreciate. And the last thing to note that is a very important principle in Hinduism is karma. Rachel asks, is all religion based on finding true self, highest good, or is that just Hinduism? Well, that's a great question. All religions have something to say about what a human person is, ultimately is. And all religions think that the human individual is more than just the accumulation of atoms and physics and chemistry and that kind of thing. So every religion has a specific view about what a human being is. So the challenge then for the religious novice then is to find for themselves what that true self is. Okay, so it could be something like, well, so there's this Atman, this Atman who is in union with God. That is the true self. That's Hinduism, right? Or it could be the true self is created in the image of a divine being, God, all right, in, say, a monotheistic religion like Judaism, Christianity, Islam. That's the true human. And so part of the goal then would be to recover that true humanity and to live lives that are ennobled as a result of that pursuit. Now, what was the second part of that question, Rachel? I'm forgetting it. I may have to follow up if you can't put it in there real quick. Anyway, that's the true self. And if you have that second part of the question, feel free to bring it in, and I'll pop it again. The highest good, yes. Oh, yes. I think as the model has for you laid out, this highest good or supreme good is a feature of all religions, whether they're theistic or non-theistic. It doesn't matter. They all have some view of what is the best for humanity. So yeah, that should always be able to be identified, what that is. Now, it might look different in different ways, but that's something that your author does a really good job of sort of honing in on how to express, in a very simple way or a single way what that highest good is. You will always be able to find it in the text here. Okay, great. Thanks for asking that. And then, the last thing was the coming of age in this universe has to do with karma, and so you'll want to look at that. Also, that's another term that is floated around, loosely in the West, but it means something quite specific in Hinduism. So be sure to grasp that. Okay, so that is all I have for Hinduism. And I can pause for a couple seconds if you want for any questions about anything I covered there. But I wanted to give you some heads up about the quiz and what the kinds of things to focus in on the quiz. Oh, one last thing on the quiz. Be sure to read all the way to the end of the chapter. There's a section on Sikhism, and there is a question on Sikhism on your quiz. So be sure to look at that as well. Don't just stop with where I said most of the questions were. You need to read the whole chapter. Any questions on Hinduism that I can field here? Great. Okay, well, let's talk then with the last few minutes about your... Okay, Rachel comes in. Would it be beneficial to take notes on each section? Absolutely it would. Here's what I recommend, and you can read about this in the close reading links that I've given you in the announcements, but it is helpful to circle terms that you don't know. It's helpful to circle terms that are clearly key ideas and concepts. So circle them, underline them, box them, whatever you want to do. And then in the margins, you want to make sure that you highlight areas with a star or a bar or something to indicate that, okay, I need to use the text here to fill out the model when it comes to this or that question. Like what kind of purification or transformation do we have to undergo? That's one of the key claims. So if you see something that has to do with that, mark that in the margin so you can find it easily later. Definitely. Other questions? Okay, great. Caitlin, this is all coming from the Fund of Ethics, right? No, Caitlin, different class. This is 210 World Religions. Sorry, you're here and getting bonus education because you're in World Religions Periscope. The Ethics Periscope comes up at 12:45, so stay tuned for that. I'll shut down this broadcast and reopen a second broadcast for Intro to Ethics, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, doing two classes and having them back-to-back like this is kind of confusing. I will try to do a better job about making that clear. Okay, so on your analysis response assignment then, what I've been doing in emphasizing the parts of the model is to prepare you for doing this assignment. So what you're doing is, after you complete the readings on Hinduism, and it'll be both in the Huston Smith text as well as the Novak text that has excerpts from actual Hindu texts, then you'll be wanting to do the analysis response. And the job there is to apply the model that I've given you to the religion. And so you have the three central principles, you have the 7 key claims, and your job is, in a nutshell, is to fill out those 10 things in your own words, identify what they are. What does Hinduism say about the human predicament? What is the human predicament? Why is there this generic wretchedness spread throughout the world? That kind of thing. Okay, Ryan, so for the response writing, we have to use both books. Yes, you'll want to be able to cite both books, definitely. All right. So what you're going and here's actually where it comes in. So you will need to support your description of that entry in the model, let's say with a human predicament. You'll want to support that then with a quote from one or the other texts. So you need to be able to cite where you got that idea or what supports your characterization of that idea with the text. Okay? Then, if you quote, now especially if you quote from the Novak book, with the specific scriptures from the religion, what you'll probably need to do is give a little explanation, because a lot of times the quotes might be a metaphor, it might be some kind of analogy, and you can't assume that your reader understands how it applies to the principle that you're talking about in the model. You can't assume that. So you have to show how and why that quote supports the way you've characterized whatever feature it is in the model that you're talking about. But sometimes the Novak text will provide some of the most effective ways of communicating what those principles are. Timothy asked, what format should we use for these assignments, APA, etc.? Good question. What I'll probably do next week is talk about how it should look. I'll probably put up an announcement with that. But basically what I'll be looking for is a quote that you've drawn from the text, and the citation then will simply be the last name of the author, comma, the page number or numbers that you quoted it from. That's all I need. Right, I just want to be clear, the response writing is due next week, correct? That is correct. It is not due at the end of this week, it is due at the end of the next week. But there's enough to it that I thought I should start talking about it now and give you a chance to ask questions about it. And then we'll cover it completely next week as well. Okay, so that's the gist of it. That's what you're doing. You are describing the principles and the claims and the model for that religion, and then you're providing textual evidence to support that characterization that you're given. I say that your total assignment would be 300 to 500 words. Rachel asked, what day exactly? I assume what day exactly is the analysis response going to be due? Well, it's on your syllabus. If you look on the schedule, it'll tell you there, and I make everything due usually on a Sunday. So it'll probably be due in two Sundays from last Sunday. Does that make sense? It'll be due in 2 Sundays. Okay. But yeah, questions like that, make sure you check your syllabus. Let's see now. Then there is, in your old analysis response assignment, handout, there's a component called the discussion requirement where you're supposed to talk to each other. No, we're not doing that. I've taken that out. That's just going to be too cumbersome, and the timing just really wouldn't work. So don't worry about the discussion part if you still have that. I made an announcement earlier about that, but do not worry about the discussion. Your job is to turn in your model for that religion with the requirements that I've given you in the assignment sheet. Okay, well that is going to just about do it for us for our time. And what I'll do is go over the analysis response again next week. And so if you've got questions, send them my way, and that way I can make sure that I address them in the next Periscope so we get that all covered. All right. Are there any final questions before we sign off today? I'll wait and take that from you. I hope you found this helpful. If you found it helpful, do some hearts or give me a thumbs up or something and let me know if this is going to be a good deal. Okay, good. There's a few hearts. I love the hearts. That's good. And any questions, folks? Are we ready to sign off for this week in World Religions? All right, awesome sauce. Good deal. Well, up we have a question. I think this must be, okay, so this is the difficulty here. Will the Periscope be the same time and day next week? Probably not. I'll have to look at the stats for who is tuned in for this session to see if I'm approaching the majority of students. If I'm not, if I don't have majority students tuned in now, then probably what I'm going to do is try an evening one. But I will let you know. I'll try to give you at least 2-3 days notice so that you can plan if you need to around that. But again, always you have the replay option, so it'll be there, recorded forever for you to look at your leisure and when you get a chance. I hope you've learned something about the. I'm not sure, Rockstar. You can replay this from the app if people didn't know. I'm going to post it on YouTube, and I post on my website and things like that. So links are going to be everywhere. They're going to be on Canvas, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. So you will have no way of missing it. Let's see. What was I going to say? I don't know what I was going to say. It can wait. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. And I will let you know about our next Periscope session, within 2 or 3 days once I get a venue worked out and a time. But for now, thanks a ton for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and let them know, that, hey, there's stuff in here that could help you on the assignments we're doing in the class. And I'll see you next time. See you later. It says stop broadcast, but it's not stopping. Let's try it again. Why is that doing that? Go. All right. I'm going to do it the hard way. No, I'm not. This will all be edited out. That's really weird. Let me try and turn it around. Stop. Weird. Huh. You're getting some laughs at my expense here. Come on. Oh, please stop. Yes, seriously. A blooper reel for sure. There will be one of those. That is really weird. So I've got a big red button, stop broadcast, but it's not stopping. Oh my gosh. PhD needs help. Please. What the heck?